Jason's channel.
Very cool. So yeah, setting up our meeting for YouTube Live right now. All right.
Perfect timing.
Looks like we're live. Hello, anybody out there? Are you still there, James?
Yeah, I'm still here, coming through.
All right, deal. So hello, errant friends. Julia here with James. And of course, I'll link his channel in the description, or actually in the comments. And James comes up with some really good analogies with some of Jason's work, referencing different things. And sometimes it's the Bible, sometimes it's Star Trek. So yeah, he had some really interesting stuff he was mentioning yesterday in just some of our messaging. So I told him we should do a live and kind of discuss some things about archaics here. And so here we are.
Yeah. There's been a bit more. It's like a download has come to me about 10 minutes ago, actually. There's a little bit more.
We'll take it away, James.
Okay. I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was with your chat with Jason. He was saying about everything orientating around the Great Pyramid and basically doing a turn, which of course replicates what is a Shah, one turning of the sky, the stars in the sky. Now, in London, I think it's just south of the river, in the middle of a roundabout, there's a hotel being built, and it looks, if you can imagine, you've got a glass bowl and you've cracked a bit of glass out of it. It's like a shard of glass that's sticking up out of the earth. It's like, how more obvious can they make this? But now looking at this from a slightly, well, this is the key word, a different perspective. It may well be that all that is being shown externally is, in some ways, from this benevolent side, and physically it will manifest as all the continents doing like a turn. But when you have something happen in your life, at the time it might seem awful, but after, it could be months, it could be weeks, could even be years, something will click and you say, now I see why I had to go through that experience. And then you shift perspective on. So it seems like the earth is basically doing a macro version of what we can do. So when we're faced with that external world, our perspective shifts, and nothing's changed, but it now looks very different, and consequently we then feel more positive about it. So that's the sort of bit that's sort of come to me today.
Yeah, it reminds me of the whole magnet thing, the piece of metal, before it has magnetism and before it doesn't, there's nothing physical that's changed about it, right?
Yeah,
yeah,
that's right.
Something has changed. It's now magnetic.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure I've done this years ago with paper clips, probably something I've seen on a children's program. You run a magnet across the opened up, so it's basically like a piece of wire, and then yeah, it becomes magnetic, and it sort of moves the polarity, or seems to shift the dielectric so it's flowing. I don't know how it works, but that piece of metal, after it's had a magnet put over it several times, will then becomes a magnet. So in a way, the spiritual path that we're all on, when you find that sort of energy within inside yourself and it begins to rise, that's our polarity changing individually. I find this fascinating way there's a micro and a macro to everything.
No doubt. And then also a visible and an invisible.
Yeah, this is the thing. Well, even in this physical reality, a pregnancy starts in the unseen, you could say. it's 9 months later before that baby comes into this physical world and is there, but it starts in an unseen. I don't know how quick women know when they're pregnant. I suppose it's an internal feeling. You feel different and think, oh, I suppose the closest I could liken it to is that biofield tuning with at 144 hertz and feeling that sort of shift inside myself. It's like, oh, there's like a blockage gone. But it wasn't anything physical as such, but it certainly felt physical.
Yeah, I mean, we're all vibrational anyway, so we bring the vibrational into the physical.
I think another one.
Notice it.
Another example I can point to with this is this ringing in the ears. I mean, it's going intense right now as we're speaking, and I've been observing this. Sometimes it's when I start, I don't know whether it's a thought comes into the mind and then you start processing it, and then it seems to go to like a higher intensity. It's distinct, and it's part of me saying that should feel painful. It's like a high-pitched noise, but it's distinct from the external noises that the ears are picking up. Maybe it's that I'm going to go with the Enki Anunnaki story of this thing called a me that is basically like a program that's put into the human bodies. I think it's to do with that. It's like with a mobile phone, you download an app. Nothing changes to the circuitry except you've now got another app. It's like this dormant DNA. When it's switched on, it's the equivalent of an app being added onto a phone.
Right. I have no clue how smartphones work. The technology is just amazing. You know, anyone would think this is magic if they weren't, you know, grown up in this era of seeing all this technology develop. And even with growing up with it all developing, I still don't understand how it works. It still seems like magic. You know, the way that we can talk right now in real time and other people can listen, just amazing.
This is the wonderful part about this technology. It's given us. It seems to be from the benefactor side. It's like we've got ways to talk to each other. I mean, imagine if we were all individually sort of coming to this awareness that something's not right with this reality, and you've got no one to talk to about it. How awful that would be. But at least we have got an outlet, even if not physically, and we can basically talk to anyone around the world like this. I think that's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and that's how secret society started, was just to have people to talk to that wouldn't commit you to an insane asylum for talking about these types of things.
Well, again, we've got a blueprint here with this technology. When you pick up your phone and then you do the power on button, you're basically saying, let there be light. And then before you know it, behold, there is light on the front of the screen. But of course, it's not like the light in this world. It's not an external light. It's a backlight. It's coming from behind. So it's showing, in some ways, it's showing you it's an opposite. Because it's not a natural light, and of course it's two-dimensional rather than three-dimensional, which I find sort of ironic. We're talking about, for argument's sake, five-dimensional reality, and we're doing it through two-dimensional methods, as it were.
Right, we're slowly catching up.
Yeah, it's a slow. Well, it's like everything in life. It's like learning to walk. You don't master it straight away. You've got to learn to crawl first. You've got to master using every limb. You start crawling and then, or basically swimming across the floor as a baby, and then you go to the crawling stage, and then you gradually go upright, and then before you know it, you're not even thinking about, I've got to put one leg in front of the other. It just becomes automatic through the repetition of doing it.
Right, and that's how this whole journey is, as we gain these abilities and the skills for what we have in us. These are innate abilities. We just haven't developed them. We've been told the opposite of what we are. And just like people who can astral project easily and lucid dream easily, it's because they practice it. Repetition, repetition, repetition. Repetition is how you heal yourself. You know, you go back and you reprogram.
Definitely. I mean, people are very quick to point out the negative of the education system, and it's about repetition. But again, it's got a mirror of that. There's a we do it, and that blueprint of practice, practice, practice with learning to walk. I mean, how many times have I seen it said about walking a spiritual path? So the blueprint must be the same. We learn by mistakes as we go. We may fall along the way, but we pick ourselves up and we just keep going. And it's like, I'm going to do this. This pure determination.
Yeah, determination, I think, is the key.
Yeah.
So you were talking about how I want to go into some of your Star Trek analogies with our archaic work, because it's pretty cool. And you were saying how that Jason was speaking at the end of the live about volcanism and the pure logic Spock character in Star Trek, how he's half Vulcan. So yeah, just kind of expand more on your whole analogy with archaic and Star Trek.
Well, if you think about the Vulcan greeting on that sci-fi is live long and prosper, and they do that sort of V sign. Again, I think it's dropping big clues. Once you move past the superficial of, oh, it's just entertainment, it's just science fiction, there's an esoteric message in all of these things. I've not looked deeper into the other characters, but it does seem to, well, pretty much every film, it seems to have a message in it. And if you can see beyond that first superficial level, and I think this is part of this journey, you start to see and hear things in new ways that you never did before. Certainly things from years ago, I would have never have heard it in the way I hear the things now. It's incredible, the way this all is just unfolding. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's definitely things are definitely coming to some sort of climax, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, that's one of the things too. So many people are like, we're trapped here in these reincarnations, and they see it as such a negative thing to have to keep reincarnating, but it doesn't have to be that way. It's all perspective, right? It can just be, you know, a new adventure each time, you know. And I think when your avatar expires, if you're at that resonance, you know, like so many of us have gotten to in this lifetime, to where, you know, we have some sureness to us. I think our next avatar will come into a good light, you know, and we will be able to pick up where we left off.
Yeah. I was going to say, I was listening to it's a lecture by Neville Goddard from I think it's 1968, called 1260 Days. Now, he said he'd made little notes in his personal Bible with specific dates against different chapters, and he picks out 4 of the main experiences. I mean, he was taught by a guy called Abdullah, who when they first met, it had taken 6 months for Neville to go to listen to this Abdullah, and the first thing Abdullah said to him was, finally you've come. And then I think he spent something like 7 years with him. and he taught him basically how to basically memorize the Bible and be able to show all the different verses across the different books. That it's like a story that's been chopped and scattered. It's like looking for those oyster pearls. But interestingly, he says about 1260 days. I can confirm from my own experience, I've only had the first 3 parts of this. The 4th one, if I've calculated this right, is going to be around about November of 2023. The first, I mean, I didn't know, I hadn't actually listened, or I was just on the point, I think, or just before I was listening to Neville Goddard. And there's this feeling at the back of the head, and it's the only way I can liken it, it's like a chick trying to break out of an eggshell. You sort of push yourself out of the skull. That's the first sign. That the next one is when you see this golden baby that sort of looks like you, and then is referenced, I think, in one of the Gospels. There's a mention of this Jesus character at the age of 12. So you get to see this young man, and he'll look just like you. And then you'll see him again at about the age of 30, and he'll call you Father. It tells you in the scriptures that no one sees the Father except through the Son. And it sounds really puzzling when you sort of take it literally. It's no one sees the Father except through the Son, and the Father doesn't see anyone except the Son. And of course, you've got the thing that, well, what if it's a woman? But the whole idea of male and female, we're talking about the esoteric realm where such a thing doesn't even exist. So even a woman will be faced with this David who will call you Father. And then you've got the birth from above, the white dove descending, as it's described. It's like a white light. I've still to go through that part. The only way is to go through the experience. Otherwise, it's like I've read a book on how to fly a Boeing 757, and I'm telling other people how to do it without ever actually having the experience. And I might actually be telling them wrong from I've not read the handbook properly. And this is basically what you've got with religions, which is
right. And that goes back to developing our immortal personalities, like Jason always talks about, and how we have to have these experiences here to, to really be able to explain it to other people. We can't just explain it just knowing about it.
Yeah. Well, when I talk about those that are familiar with Neville Goddard, if I'm talking about Neville Goddard and then I'm talking about Jason Archaix, and a lot of people are going to say, well, the two things are totally unrelated. Well, I disagree, and I can show this. I think it's fair to say it's a pretty unique position that Jason was put in to go into prison at that time. So he went through when they were doing the building of new prisons, and then getting all those books to catalogue and accessing all that US prison library service and seeing all those old books. That's his path. He was meant to do that. Now, in doing that, like he said many times, he'd be sitting in his cell and he'd be making notes, and what feels like an hour as a whole night's gone by because he's denied the 5 senses of the external and he's immersed himself in what he was doing. He's totally shut off from the outside world. So he's done like a form of meditation. It may not be the conventional spiritual meditation that most people would think, but it's severing that, it's turning inward away from the outside world and opening up a whole new world from that. And I'm grateful that he has, because it's like we've now got a working chronology that anybody can test and if you've got information or a particular knowledge on a thing, you can apply that blueprint of the isometric markers, and you can find those the palindromic mirror effects that you've got with everything. I mean, I've certainly done it with the composer Anton Bruckner and found this to be true. And I'm sure if I just kept going, I'd get the same results. I may well try other things as I come across them and think, right, let's apply this. Let's look at the isometric marker. And I'm pretty sure it's going to work out. And even in our own lives, a micro version of that, like we said on the last one, maybe measure it in days and find it does work. I mean, it's interesting as well. You've got the word days. Now, are we going to spell that D-Y-S or are we spelling it D-A-Z-E? It's the same sound, but a different spell. So we walk around in a daze, in 2 days, to be honest, because there's a sleeping time and a waking time, as it were, a conscious time and a subconscious time. So we're in 2 days. So we live in 2 days.
Yeah, crazy. So yeah, do you think Jason could be like a reincarnation of Nostradamus or Mother Shipton?
Well, I've already said on a comment on one of his videos, I see him as like Thoth. He's put thought into it. Thoth, if I remember rightly, is the keeper of the underworld. Well, he's showing what the underworld are doing and how they're putting out these things. I mean, 1902, I didn't realize, I think he said it was Carnegie paid for something like 800 public libraries to be built. And it's like, well, why? Why would you spend your money on that? It doesn't feel that it's just out of pure benevolence as such. Who knows? Maybe it's the benevolent side working through everything. I feel, well, to be honest, I feel that all that is happening in the last few years is a sort of prelude. And it's basically saying to change your perspective, change your polarity on things.
Right. Yeah, it's just the position he was in, and
Yeah,
I don't know. You know, his predictions, he has so many of them, not just the 2040. So I think a lot of people will realize before then if he's on point or not. But yeah, his data, the cycles, they're there. And if you look at all the evidence with mud flood and, you know, just all that stuff, because, you know, I was deep in those rabbit holes before I discovered Jason, because it was so liberating to just put all that together. The Phoenix events, just, you know, those cataclysms just explain so much. And for them not to be really natural events too makes sense too when you look at all this data from all the mud floods and stuff like that. So yeah, it's just amazing that we're having all this put together right now.
well, I find whatever route you come into, I certainly, if you look at the older videos on the channel, I'm talking just purely about conspiracy theories and the truth community side of things. And I took the step of going over to more looking at the spiritual and the internal thing. I mean, it's all very well looking at all these things and realizing we've been lied to about everything. But it's like, well, how does that actually benefit me? To know, I know that, but it's, what am I supposed to feel from that? Am I supposed to feel fearful that they're out to get me, or it's like, no, there's more to this, and it's just seemed a consistent. Well, it is a consistent message. When you just look at the etymology of it, you've got a chorus. Well, the core of the thing is us. You've got Jesus, us. He is us. The active thalamus. Well, the all am us. We are all the I am. This is the weird I can see the way they've done the twists on the thing. It's a bit like that wire around the top of a champagne bottle. You've got the truth. It's the same piece of wire, but it's now been twisted several times, and it's unraveling that twist. And I found. Sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, there's that thing about the world is run by signs and symbols. And it started off with the three spellings of there, as in it's over there, it's theirs, as it's a sort of possession, or an abbreviated they are. And yeah, that's coincidence. No, hang on a minute. I'm now seeing more and more. And then it's like, I'm starting to see a pattern in the order of these letters. And then I started to look at the actual letter shapes themselves, because when you come into this world, unless someone tells you that's a letter A, it's just a thing you'd look at and you wouldn't know what it was. But when you start going a bit deeper and looking, they seem to be, a lot of them seem to be not unlike the Far Eastern characters. It's funny that the letters are also called characters. Take the letter L, for example, which is obviously connecting with Elohim. Well, this is said to be hell on earth. So the H would be human. The H is basically when a cell splits into two, there's a bridging part, so it looks like a letter H. E is always energy, and you're on two L's. It's the lower calf and the foot. But it doesn't have to be hell if we change their polarity, and that seems to be referenced in the song Hotel California. The lyrics go on the lines of, I heard a mission bell, and I thought this could be heaven or this could be hell. So it's like, well, mission. Well, that's miss, I, on. The mission is like to turn that spiritual eye on, activates that pineal gland. And it says at the end of that song, you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave, which implies we're in an enclosed system. So yeah, I could go and jump off a bridge in front of a train, but then I'd end up coming up into another body.
Right,
and it
and
wouldn't
you
be very.
can astral project, but then you have to come back to this body eventually.
Yeah, we seem to be sort of magnetized, and like Jason just said, we seem to be plugged in through the nervous system that we can't sort of pull ourselves out. Well, if we did pull ourselves out, there'd just be a corpse left. The remains remain here. Again, it says in the Bible, nothing added, nothing taken away. So if it wasn't all these artificial laws and you just drop down dead, in a natural state, you would just gradually decompose and be pulled back down into earth anyway. And then the cycle starts again. The physical body will transmute into maybe a nutrient for daffodils or for a tree. A lot of, I think it's the Norse or the Viking, they would put the ashes of ancestors under a tree, which would be absorbed in the roots. And it's like we're all leaves on that tree. And it's described as being a family tree. It's like, I quite like that idea. That's quite wonderful. So the physical part will live in another form, but that's only the avatar. But we're an eternal spirit. We can't die. This is the biggest trick, because no matter how much money you've got, who has ever cheated death? I know there's speculation on certain people that are very wealthy about this, which is a different topic. But everybody is taught to fear death. It's the one thing you can never escape. It's inevitable. It's a fact. We're all going to expire at one point. We're subject to time. So make the most of the time. It's your liquid gold. It's your true wealth, to spend the time wisely. And it's like, yeah, I could go and jump off a bridge in front of a train, but that would be very selfish from the point of view of, what trauma am I going to cause that train driver? So I can't do that, because how could I inflict that that vision on somebody else of something horrific like that, that it might traumatize them for the rest of their lives, and I don't want to be responsible for that. Cool.
Yeah, and this whole thing about having people fear death is just insane. You know, for one thing, like you said, the big secret is we don't die. And
Yeah.
it's inevitable. It's inevitable. Death is inevitable. And you don't get to take all this so-called wealth you've accumulated here with you. You know, these people that have to be billionaires and trillionaires, I just can't get that at all. And making people fearful of death is like making them fearful of going to sleep. You know, you have to sleep every night, but if you go to, you know, and they could do that, they could program everybody to be insomniacs and have sleep deprivation and be even more zombie-like if they wanted to. They have so much power, you know, with mainstream media and programming. And, you know, you're talking about in schools, the repetition they do there. Well, they do the repetition because it programs you and it's worked very well. Look around. So, you know, and it works on us too when we work on ourselves with that repetition. So, yeah, this whole
Again,
fear of death that they're pushing is just, it's ridiculous when you really know the truth.
look at the big clue that's given to us. When we're talking, because you said the key word there, when you look at program in terms of computers, it's PROGRAM. Interesting, it's got RAM, which is a reference to Aries. So just as a side to that, so program I would break down as pro, so it's creating something like procreate and or proceed. So it's moving forward. G is Gaia, and then Ram. So it seems to be referencing the astrology side and giving a code. But when it's something in the media, on television, you've got ME on the end. So what is it programming? Me. It's a huge clue, because it's like, why would they spell one way and add ME on the end when it's a television program? And it's the intent of what it's programming. If it's a computer programming, it's programming something artificial. But if it's a television program, it's trying to program something that's going through a life experience. And that is what it is. This is the period from birth to death. But what about from death to birth? Or as Ken Wheeler would, as I say, what as Ken Wheeler has said, what makes you think that thing in the mirror you see when you brush your teeth is is you? You know?
All the programming that we've had makes us think that.
Well, I don't know if you've done it, but I've looked in the mirror and I've looked into the eyes, and it's like, who are you? It's like I'm looking out from something else and seeing through like a double lens. I'm seeing a micro version. I think you raised this question with Jason yesterday about, is it a similacrone within a similacrone? Well, it's like, if I can't find the answer one way, I'll look the other way. So if I can't find it externally, I'll look at myself. And if the essence is looking out and then looking through these lenses, the two eyes, into the external world, well, that is sort of showing that we're something within something else, within something else. So I think that may sort of help answer the question on is it one simulation or more than one? Seems to be one contained within a bigger one, and beyond that, I don't know.
Right. We can never know what's out there. That's the thing. But we do know, you know, just from our experiences, that we do create this reality, that our thoughts do manifest. And if we're not aware of that, we're not necessarily going to manifest what we want. I mean, those are just experiential facts that we know, you know, because we've experienced that. And really, I guess that's all you can know is what you experience. And then you just see how other things resonate with you, you know, and then deal with it from there. It might be right, it might not. And I know I've changed my thoughts and beliefs many a times throughout this lifetime, which has seemed like 10,000 lifetimes in this one. And that makes me think it is kind of coming some kind of end, because it's like things have really accelerated. You know, I think a lot of people I know have had really tough lifetimes this time around. You know, just so many hardships that they've learned from. And like you said, when you're going through them, it's tough. But when you get on that other side and you look at all the lessons that come from it, you know, there's no emotion there anymore. It's just you just totally see the lesson. So, and maybe that's something that's happening now too, is that we can get over stuff easier because we, you know, it's the lesson. We got to get the lesson and go on, get the lesson and go on. We're like in the accelerated class now.
Yeah, I agree with that, definitely. The phenomenal rate that this all seems to come through, and again, it's talked of in computers about downloads, and then we're talking about spiritual downloads, and it seems a blueprint. This solid physical reality is copying or mimicking a spiritual reality. And I don't think, well, I don't write off even Darwinism. There's a truth in that. And that being that in this, when you're talking about extinction of and evolution of a species, you need two things to compare for that to happen. There has to be a species, and something doesn't adapt, but something does, which then evolves. This is a spiritual evolution. It's not it says in the Bible, this is not a war of the flesh, this is a war of the spirit. But it's an internal war in ourselves to bridge those two hemispheres of the brain. Religion are very good at using this. They talk about the 10% tithing, where you give 10% of your income to the whichever church. That's referencing the conscious 10% of the brain. You're giving over the control to the God, the active pineal gland that is in all of us. You're now coming from the heart. You're like with, okay, if I go and jump in front of the train, I'm not being aware of the effect I'm going to have on that train driver. But now I've got that perspective. I can't do that. That would be why would I want to?
Well,
I don't want to.
Right, that's your empathy coming through, you know, because you're a true errant.
Well, again, this is great. I love it. You just say a word, empath. Well, this reality is backwards. So swap it can be that way around. EM, electromagnetic, or swap it round the other way. You've got me. It's the me path. And again, it's often quoted, the meek shall inherit the earth. Well, the me, and then the EK is flipped over. It's a key. The key is within me. That's what it's telling me. It's not about being afraid of some, I'm going to use a Ken Wheeler one, the great butterbing in the sky. It tells you in, I think it's Psalm 82, verse 5 or 6, that Christ is within you. In chakras, it's the solar plexus, the place of the sun. That's where it's born. And of course, that energy has got to go down to chakras. It's got to fall before it rises. And it talks about the fall of mankind. Well, internally, we have to fall. We have to let go. And basically, it's like jumping off a cliff with no fear that you know you're going to be saved. That's what it's referencing, really. I'll give you a modern interpretation as well, to show how ridiculous to read the Bible as a literal story. A comment that's often put on things is LMAO, Lamau, or laughing my arse off. Well, I cannot for the life of me think where I've ever seen somebody laugh that hard that their bottom falls off. So I'm not going to take that literally any more than the term, let's go and paint the town red. I've never seen anybody go and get enough paint and paintbrushes and paint an entire town red. So So I'm certainly not going to take anything that's given to me in the Bible as being to take it literally.
Yeah,
But I
people
can.
really need to listen to Bill Donahue on that, right?
Well, this is the amazing thing. I can listen to Bill Donahue, who's a non-biblical perspective. I can listen to Neville Goddard, which is 100% biblical passages and his own life experiences. I can listen to Edgar Cayce. I can listen to Joseph Benner, a fantastic writer, and many people have said that is basically God talking through this Joseph Benner. And it's none of this conflicts. I can listen to Jason and I can hear the same message. It doesn't matter which. It's almost like we're getting a 360 view of these things across all of this. I think this is wonderful. The way, again, it replicates life. Not everybody is going to be equally good at painting or carpentry or balancing books or whatever. We've all got different skills. So it makes sense that in the spiritual and the esoteric sense, we've got different strengths. And it's when we come together as a chorus and we're all singing from the same song sheet as a choir, we enquire, we go within and become that choir. We're singing from the same song sheet. And I think this is marvelous. What's been revealed. This is definitely the revelation.
Yeah, it has to be. Yeah, so much is being revealed, and not just in the spiritual realm. You know, look at all the government stuff being exposed, the medical industry, everything's getting exposed. And the rest of this year should be very interesting in the US, you know, with all the political stuff that's about to go down. So yeah, it's so nice to be able to really be the observer in this and not feel caught up in it all. And you see those people who are just so absorbed in what's going on out there, this fear mongering reality they all live in, you know, the collective reality bubble. And it's just so nice to not be in it. And you know, I feel bad for those people, but at the same time, you know, a lot of them, they're the NPCs anyway. And I don't know, what can you do? What can you do except help people that come into your path? And you know, everything seems to come into our path, like you said. The message is everywhere. It's in all these different people you listen to on YouTube. It's in all the media, the movies, the music, everywhere. In nature, people you just happen to talk to, they might drop something on you too. You know, it's just coming from everywhere.
Half of it is as you were saying that, it came into my head. Know your enemy. They're not actually an enemy, but the person you're talking to, if they're of say heavily into science, it's probably not going to work if you're going to use biblical verses to try and show them a different way. I think a lot of it is you have to say it in a way that appeals to something they have an interest in, but at the same time, if they're too far entrenched, they seem to just put a wall up anyway, and it just becomes a waste of energy. It's choose your battles wisely, but don't see the battle as a negative thing. See it as a positive thing. It's really it's being a Christ saying to the disciples, cast your nets over to the right side. You're on a firm foundation. You're on a shore, so you're sure what you're saying, and you're saying to these vessels, not fishermen. You're saying to these avatars, these vessels, switch over to your 90% of your brain, find that bridge, cross the Nile, as it were, and get that dialogue going between the two halves. Come together within one. I mean, look at what they're showing with the whole transgender thing, the twin towers, and then putting up a single tower, two into one. They're giving you a material version of it, same as circumcision. It's not that barbaric religious procedure. It's circumcising the layers of external nonsense that we end up sort of entrapping ourselves in, the trappings of this world. So it's peeling off those layers. And same with whether you're coming from the truth-seeking side, or it's uncovering the layers, piercing the layers of the veil. But it's like, don't get stuck on one topic, don't get stuck on mud floods or flat earth, or that's just, like Jason says, it's just a stepping stone. But people will put so much energy that they've got the right answers. They know 100% the earth is flat. I don't. There was a time I would have said that, but I see it more like an eye, and we're on the iris, which would imply it's probably a donut shape. But I don't know. I can't put my hand on my heart and say this is the absolute truth on that. I can only see a perspective, and then if it feels right, then it is right. But it may not resonate.
So much passion into stuff they can't even prove, you know. It's just, yeah,
it's bizarre. I was going to ask you, what was your route into walking this path? Was it the sort of truth seeking side?
Right. Well, I started out like Catholic, kind of. My parents really didn't go to church that much. Luckily, I didn't have to go to Catholic school, because that's a whole nother story. And then I basically became atheist as I went through college and went into math and science, even was a math and science teacher. So I was a pretty staunch atheist for quite a while. And then things just kept happening in life where, I just, I had to think it wasn't just a big accident that made us. Most accidents, when you see the results, they're pretty chaotic. They're not organized being like the human body. We're pretty amazing. All these trillions of cells, and each one knows exactly what to do. Just mind blowing. So yeah, just basically really thinking things through. I've always loved to learn, and think things through. And then the more you really, examine what's going on in this reality, you see there is way more to it. And I guess one of the big things that woke me up was watching Zeitgeist when it first came out, and just seeing that was like the first syncretist thing with the religions that I had ever seen, where they showed how all the religions kind of synchronized together. And yeah, from there, and then I got divorced at 40, and then I kind of had my promiscuous years between 40 and my early 50s, and then I just, just wasn't feeling that life anymore. My frequency kind of changed. I did some lifestyle changes. I quit eating meat, adopted a dog, and just started doing some introspection, and here I am now.
That's wonderful, because I can see, like, well, a sort of foundation in the Catholic religion, and then science and mathematics. They're things you can draw on. And what the other thing I see as well is this compartmentalization, the way this system works. Because otherwise it's like saying, when you go in the bank, the cashier that you sort of hand your money over and say, can I pay this into my account, or can I draw out some money? It's like saying they're part of this banking dynasty. They're just the same as us. They're caught in the crossfire. They're on the outplay end of it, and don't realize what they're connected to. I can't condemn them for it. We've all been in this position. It's got to the stage morally, it's like everything I buy, it's like it's getting tax added onto it. I can't do anything about that, but I can minimize how much I feed that monster. And because it needs to be continuously fed. That seems very clear. The amount, when they're talking about NASA, how many millions a day they're taking out of taxpayers' money, and it's like, for what? They'd be better off going to Hollywood. The films are more convincing. It's like, what do you? If I was a businessman, if this was a sort of a all things being equal, and I had trillions or whatever, I wouldn't be I wouldn't be investing in NASA, because I'd be looking at their track record and say, right, you allegedly put all these rockets and things up there. What exactly have you brought back? What am I going to get? What return am I going to get on my investment? Because a piece of rock. which I believe has been proved to not even, well, I can't, has come from the moon. To me, it's an enclosed system. There's no way out. When you see planes going across the sky, it just looks like an upside down speedboat going through the water. And it is a form of water up there after all.
Right. Apparently it'll be even more watery after 2040. And I thought, yeah, so I guess we don't get to keep these avatars, which mine's pretty worn out anyway. So, and I thought of another thing, like if you die around 2040 and you're actually born during the vapor canopy in your new avatar, then you definitely have the potential to be some kind of superhero.
Yeah, could be a 15-footer or a 20-foot giant. Hey, that's
Right.
exciting. Right.
Yeah. So maybe that's the plan in the Similacrone for certain people to be born in that vapor canopy, you know, certain personalities, immortal personalities to be born during that time.
I can only reference a Neville lecture on this one. I think this is where the story comes from. There was a lady who lost her fiance in the First World War, and every day she wouldn't accept that he'd died. Every day she'd go to the window and look, and apparently when she was 80, she looks like she was still 30. And I have a very strong feeling that we can actually age reverse, or we can definitely slow the aging down. So if you're happy with the avatar, why wish it gone? You can program in I am healthy and change it.
Totally. I think that 100%. And this one breatharian that I follow, Elatom Elamine, I'll put his link too. And he's legit too, because people have tried to, you know, prove that he wasn't a breatharian, and the only thing they've caught him doing is drinking some juice, supposedly. Nobody has anything on camera, but anyway, so he's definitely determined to live at least 156 more years, and that's 2178. So, and he, you know, and all the people who are fruitarians too, I think if we really just learn to use the prana that we have all around us, just like the free energy that you can do everything with, like they did in, you know, Tartaria or whatever, you know, the whole Antiquitech, free energy that gets spread around. We have that for us too. We can get our energy from the ether too, from the prana. And people are proving it. You know, there's people who only eat a couple of times a week, you know, and they're fine. And they used to tell us if you went 3 days without food, you would die. And even Tom Campbell, who's super, super mainstream, he went without eating because he read it was possible way back in the 70s or something. And I think he went for like 30 days or something. And then he got nervous because he read something that might be bad for him. And then he started having symptoms. So he went back to eating, but whatever, you know, it's just a matter of where your intention is and what you program yourself. But yeah, I think we have the potential to do or be anything, and especially now with all the energies being amped up, you know, now that we're coming to some kind of close.
Well, from what you've just said, that's another biblical, I can't remember where it is in the Bible. It says, take no thought. So it sounds like Tom Campbell has took this thought, oh, this could be bad for me. And then if he hadn't implanted that thought inside himself, it would have gone away. About a couple of months ago, I stupidly took the grill out from the cooker, and I caught my little finger on the wire, and it was like, ouch, and it started to blister up, and I thought, hang on a minute, this has only just happened. So in my mind, I've put into practice what Neville's Goddard says about remember the future, go to the end. So I've rewound that 2 minute, well, not even, probably just a minute. And I've now played it forward in my mind without burning my finger. The next day, I've got no sensation of a burn. I've got no blister. It had gone. It was
That's
easy.
the way to deal with trauma too, is to go ahead. Like if you're going through trauma, you go to the future and where you're not there, and you look at it from that perspective, where you just have the lesson from it, and you don't have to actually ever go through it that way.
this is it. A lot of these counseling things where people will go to, it becomes like a trap because they're reliving some horrific experience that maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago. They're keeping that alive. They're not, they're stuck. They're not able, they're in their own mud flood. Something that stuck in my mind from this Neville Goddard lecture, 1260 days. He says in that it's 3.5 years. He said, but I counted it on days because the old calendar system was 360 days. So even Neville Goddard mentions exactly what Jason mentions about the draconian year of 360 days. And I thought, bingo, that's another confirmation from two completely different sources that are saying the same thing again. And it's like, wow.
Yeah, confirmation and answers are everywhere.
Yeah. Maybe it's this similacrone. It's like seek and ye shall find. So if you start looking for things, it seems to present them to you. And I think we can all put loads of energy into worries about how am I going to pay the mortgage, how am I going to pay the phone bill, and so on and so on. What a waste of energy. But if we're in the moment and then you picture in your mind the outcome you want, you use the law of assumption and you dare to assume, you take that leap of faith, you deny what 5 senses reality is showing you, you turn those senses inward, and you basically say to yourself, how would I feel if I, whatever the outcome you want? The more you can impress that feeling into the body, it creates chemical changes, and it just seems to happen as if like by magic. It is incredible the way it just pans out. I've had so many experiences of this, so numerous now. A good one to draw on is if you can remember back to being a child and that excitement when you're just about to open a birthday or a Christmas present and that thing you really wanted. If you can hold that feeling of that excitement, not the specific details, because the devil's always in the detail, but just the feeling side of it, that anticipation and wow, I'm just about to get the thing I really wanted. You can draw that towards you. We're basically magnetic anyway.
Yeah, it really does work that way.
Well, you've proved that you're living it, aren't you?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, and it's just happened so much when I was young. I'm like, I grew up really poor and used to always play school, and I would say, yeah, I'm gonna be a teacher, and my friends would be like, you're not gonna be a teacher. There's no way, you're not gonna go to college. But yeah, and then I always wanted to have a 2-story house. I've had like 3 of those, and where I'm living now, I've pretty much manifested this. I remember one time I wrote down exactly the kind of place I wanted to live with my animals and stuff, and pretty much have it. You have to be very specific when you're given the details because I wanted a water source, and I was thinking like a creek or a river, but I got a little pond instead. But I'm not complaining. But yeah, it really, and like we talked about before, you and I kind of keep our manifestations vague. We don't put all that detail in, but if you do, the more detail you put in, then you'll prove to yourself that you're manifesting. You put in that detail, you will get exactly what you put in, and it's just it's a real phenomenon, and it's great.
Definitely. I had this in the town the other week. It was going quiet, and I imagined holding a £5 note in my hand. Within seconds, somebody came up and gave me a £5 note. It's like, wow, that was easy. But it's reciprocal, because I want that. I'm looking for those ones that have got the lights, you can see it in the eyes. I think it's pretty clear with this 2020. It has given a clear vision. People have shown their true colors. Again, this whole story of a sort of pandemic that doesn't respect national boundaries. It just sweeps across everything, same as anything in nature does. It doesn't recognize man-made concepts of like national boundaries, county boundaries and things. So why would that thing not affect every family? It seems pretty a consistent pattern that all of us on this path are sort of in some ways losing our 3D families and finding we've got a spiritual family, and our true connection is through the spirit. That's the picture I'm seeing with this.
Yeah, most definitely, because the family that I came here with, it's been a tough one. So yeah, I definitely resonate much more with the people I found that I feel like are soul family. And I find that all the time, people who find me here in Portugal, you know, I'm from Texas here in Portugal, and, you know, they'll even say, you know, there are no coincidences, you know, because we find each other because we're on the same path, often through field tuning. And you just know when you see those certain people, you just recognize them. And yeah, we know a lot of us know each other from, you know, outside of this little existence that we're having now, this game, this ride, however you want to describe it, this dream.
Well, think of it like a roller coaster. I mean, you can enjoy it or you can be frightened of the sudden drop and the climb again. It depends what experience you want to have of it. So this could be heaven or this could be hell. You choose the way you want to see it, really. I've definitely moved into, I see it as the theme in things is this, I think it's, yeah, Levet channel talks about this constant battle between fire and ice, and it's pushed out the other two elements, but we're bringing heaven upon earth. So we're bringing the spirit, the air element, to the earth, or we're either that or we're lifting earth upwards, not sort of physically as it were, but I wonder when they talk about flattening the curve, whether they're actually referring to this sort of glass ceiling, as it were, whether they're actually telling the truth that it's not just us that's elevating, it's the entire earth that's elevating in a sense. And I don't know if you've seen these things about these stones that sort of seem to move. And I've only seen one video on this of trees that can walk. And it's like, well, yeah, why would it just be humanity? If we're getting a spiritual upgrade, what about the rest of nature? And I can see a day where cats and dogs are going to be smarter than some humans.
I think that day's already here. You don't see the dogs walking around with mask on.
No, this is true. But the whole thing with dogs and cats especially, again, there seems to be a consistent pattern that they seem to be like guardian souls that come into our lives for a very short time. Dogs seem to be more the unconditional love side, and cats seem to be the sort of the old wisdom side, as it were. They seem more sort of regal than dogs are more sort of childlike.
Yeah, the cats put you in your place, that you know that you're here to serve.
I'd be a willing servant with cats. I do like, well, I like cats. I can't.
I have a couple of cats here. They're awesome.
Well, I like cats and dogs, but if I had to make a choice, I think I prefer the cats because they're less maintenance as well. Yeah, I'm going to take them out for a walk every day. They do their own thing. It's like if I ever get a place, I'm sure it'll be a cat that finds me. I won't have to go and look for one. If I'm meant to have a cat, it will find me. It seemed awful a few months ago. There's about 4 friends all lost cats, and it's as if they sacrifice themselves to sort of help us on our paths. Certainly with cats, they seem to be like watching something we can't see walk across a room. They've got
Cats
a slightly...
are totally interdimensional. They're interdimensional. I've known of 2 cats, one very recently that just disappeared right in front of their owners, and one of them was missing for 5 days.
It's just come to me. I've not ever wrote the word cat down, but what I'm saying is see at, or as I've described it, the letter T, the capital letter T, consists of basically a capital I, and then you've got a level, but it's at its highest level in that symbol for the letter T. The A seems to indicate that the way we should be going, ascending, as it were. So you see the ascending God inside us. That's how I'm breaking the word down.
The word cat, who would have thought?
Well, it's
So
just,
yeah, pets are just great.
I just look at words and sequences of and combinations of letters. I mean, how many words end in T-I-O-N? So you've basically got God, I, organic, and then the N is basically the sine wave, what you would see on a heart monitor, the path of the sun. It's that sort of linear, and it's also doing the vertical axis as well as it on while it's on that linear path. So it seems to be replicated in everything.
Right.
I just find the whole thing amazing now.
Someone said dogs are more grounding and cats are more ethereal.
Yeah. The other thing, sort of referencing Rudolf Steiner with animals, their spines are horizontal, so they've got a greater surface area exposed to the astral energies. We're upright, so it's only the sort of top of our head that's, if we were on all fours like animals, it would be our spine. And again, it's sort of shown the difference like between a horse and a cow. A cow is sort of a plodding earth animal. It's Taurus is an earth sign, whereas a horse is basically trying to fly. Even down to their droppings. I mean, a horse's droppings are sort of like a ball and will sort of roll, whereas a cow makes a pancake and it's very earthy. And the way the two animals behave naturally is you've got the cow is very sort of plod along. The horse is like wants to fly. It wants to run.
Right. Free spirit.
Yeah. And probably their main figure on the next figure into this as well. They're like an antenna. I've said that hair is like a spiritual antennas. They're like our trees because they're connected
Well,
by
and
roots.
horns on animals too, they have to be somehow tapped into something, especially those spiral horns that some animals have.
Yeah, that I've never sort of looked into that, but that nothing is by chance or coincidence. That is, to me, is very clear that there's an intelligent design behind everything.
And like Jason said, there's something about mammals, mammals. And I like it that he said, our pets definitely have the potential to house souls or immortal personalities. Because I definitely feel like that with my pets.
Yeah, I feel maybe there's some sort of, from outside of this, there's some level that we don't understand where we can come into a mammal's body to help another soul. Actually, this has just reminded me, I've got a playlist. I think I entitled it Begin Here. It's two 15-minute children's stories. One of them is called Journey of the Little Soul, and it makes it so simple to sort of understand our purpose here. It's like, well, this is a realm of duality. If I've come from a realm of perfection, how would I know what the negative energies are? How would I know what loss and lack would feel like, and unless I experience it? So it's like, well, maybe I want to find out what that's like. Put me into an avatar so I can go and feel all these things, and then I can report back and say, oh, you don't want to do that, or this is fantastic, you've got to come for this ride.
Yep, makes sense.
When this all started 2 years ago, I said, you're getting, but if you think of it, this like a traveling fun fair or circus. It's like, this is the final show. So you're not just going to get the main attraction, you're going to get all the side attractions, side shows all thrown at you at the same time. And I think that's been borne out, because this constant bombardment of all these different stories of wars and earthquakes and fires and floods and all these disasters here, there and everywhere, and plastic problems and so on. But again, like just taking the plastic thing, we used to have glass milk bottles in the UK delivered by a milkman, and once you'd finished the bottle, you rinsed it out, you gave it back to the milkman. That was recycling ahead of its time. But that has pretty much been taken away from us. And now there's all this outcry about plastic pollution. Well, sorry, but I didn't get a say.
Why did we never go away from that? It's so crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, again, it's the system giving you, it seems to be giving us a very distorted thing about being a throwaway society, and sort of showing you the opposite of how to be. It's like the mirror version. It's like, well, that clearly is not the way to be. It seems, I look at packaging and things on anything I get and think, how can I reuse that?
Always. Yeah. Just the packaging is not sustainable. I mean, it's just horrendous how much packaging. They'll even peel a banana and put it in some plastic container and sell it to you that way.
Yeah. Well, 4 pints of milk, I mean, just one town alone. It's like, this is ridiculous. But then there's all these other playouts that have happened. So they shut down with the first lockdown, they shut down all the McDonald's and all the Burger Kings and all those sort of things.
That's good.
And I'm thinking infrastructure there. You suddenly put the brakes on it. Now, what's happened to all that milk, all those eggs, allegedly all that meat and whatever else they put in that food? But that has a knock-on effect on the food production. It's like, well, what? And then all this sudden surge of every shop you go in overnight, they've all got these suddenly got these huge sheets of perspex. Where did that all come from? That shows pre-planning to this, because no business is going to mass produce something unless they know they've got a customer to sell it to. That alone is like a telltale sign to me that this ain't right.
Right. And it's all a message that we just need to get back to nature. We need to eat from the earth. No packaging needed or involved. Eat fresh, alive food, not eat death, and not eat stuff that's not even food. There's hardly any real food at grocery stores.
Well, it doesn't even taste right. I had some satsumas from the food bank, and I even said to my neighbor, I said, try this. And he went, ugh, he spat it out straight away. I said, it's got this like metallic taste to it. And it's like, this is probably genetically modified. It's like, but my taste buds are telling me, don't eat it. So no way. And I'm some of this fruit, I'm watching the way it breaks down. And it's like, I never used to go like that. It didn't sort of implode. it's something not right with a lot of. I don't want to spread fear of food, because you can override. I can eat an orange as long as it still tastes right, and I can tell my body it's got goodness in it. Whether it has or hasn't is irrelevant. But
Right. Well, one food that's consistent is bananas. They always taste the same, depending on their ripeness.
aren't you supposed to shove a banana up your nostril now and see if you've got monkeypox?
Is that what it is? I'm sure people have tried that if they heard that on mainstream media.
Well, again, you've got a reverse play. I mean, if you look at the Darwin's theory of evolution, you've gone from apes or monkeys to man, but they're actually making monkeys out of everybody by these stories they're putting out. They're playing as a devolution.
Yeah,
But
they're totally playing on it, and it just has to be a play. Even some of the names of some of the famous people, if you really go into it, yeah, just everything. I'm really looking forward to the big political show in the U.S. that's pending.
that could be very interesting. Again, you've got a theme that the words or the saying that was put about was mandatory testing. Well, certainly, if you look at the Bible, unless you can read it in the right way, not read it as a secular history and take it literally, it's almost like a safeguard of, if you've not got to a certain level of awareness, then you're not going to get through it. And this seems to be the real testing, seems to be of how much are you going to believe this crap, or how. And you've got lockdown, so that's a time to sort of go within yourself and evaluate things, and then hopefully come up with the idea, yeah, this doesn't add up to me. I need to start looking at. But this is the thing, it's always the last place you look, whether it be car keys or whatever. So again, that replicates where you're going to find the answers, that they are all within. And from having that memory come back of a baptism as a baby, I knew intuitively, I knew that what was being done was wrong, but I couldn't express it. But there's that feeling is there, and that is the real sight, that it's in the feeling.
Well, you probably did express it energetically, but no one picked up on it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the programming. Oh, it's just a baby. They're just vocalizing. They're just learning to speak. And something I said earlier, I said I find this amazing. Well, it is amazing. And as much as anything else, if you look at most printed circuit boards, generally they seem to be green or brown. Then they have components soldered onto them, generally 2 pins. Well, we're on a motherboard. It's the natural earth seems to be generally green or brown. We've got 2 souls that are hopefully on grass or whatever, is barefoot and in contact with this earth. So we create the circuit. So it's then, okay, if I'm on a circuit board, what component do I want to be? Do I want to be a resistor? Do I want to be a capacitor? Do I want to be a transformer? And I think a transformer, changing the polarity from AC to DC to direct current, so I have a direct connection to this higher consciousness, which is the pineal gland again. And that again,
the transformer is the alchemist, right?
Yeah, it's replicated in the material world as well, because just go on Yahoo Finance, chase any company back, and you'll find it's either Vanguard or BlackRock. Well, BlackRock is clearly a non-active pineal gland. It's lacking light. So that it's being shown in so many ways the same message, but it's just decoding it. I knew when that, with 2020, I thought 2020 is how they express clear vision. I thought something is going to that something is going to be played out. I didn't know what. Maybe if Jason had been about before, and well, not been, he was about before, but maybe if I'd have seen his work before, it possibly we could have said, we can see what's going to happen in 2020. It was just a feeling that was confirmed that something was going to be pulled off. And it was just amazing how overnight the majority of humanity just seemed to roll over and okay, and just go along with it. And it's like the conversations you hear, it's like, oh, I'd like to do that, but we're not allowed. And it's like, what, are you in a playground? This conditioning to looking up to authority all the time. We are our own authority. And again, what a beautiful word authority is. AU is gold, and then Thor. So it's the golden sun. Another way of expressing it. An author. So you're writing a script if you're an author. That's saying about never let anybody pick up the pen and write your life story. You pick up the pen and write your own life story.
Yeah, we have to be the directors, the writers, and the actors.
Yeah, that's something I said on video. It's like, well, on the videos, I'm the character, the actor. I'm also the director, the script writer, the producer. I can, the background scene is sort of whatever's there, whatever I can make use of. Some of the videos, if people could see from the production side of it, I've got the phone balanced on books or something to get it to the right height if I want to show a particular thing. It looks really precarious sometimes. And the one I did with trying to show the experience of being in the womb, it's like, what have I got? I've got a pink color t-shirt and a cardboard box. Well, that looks, it gives a vague impression of this sort of pinkness, but not very clear. And that's the closest I could find to give you a visual representation of being in the womb. And that is like the first sign, really. It's like, it feels like the world's closing in. No, it's because you're growing too big for the womb. So you've got to come out into this reality and face daylight, the external world.
Right.
Half of
Yeah,
this sorry, carry on.
Go ahead.
As to say, half of this battle is knowing where we are. Well, I know exactly where we are, and that's referenced in the Bible. It tells you at the end of Genesis that God was buried in Golgotha, the skull, and carried out into Egypt. Well, Egypt is the external world. Where I am, there's pyramids all around me. And I'm not talking about physical pyramids here. I'm talking about pretty much every structure, whether it be a social club to the biggest corporate business. You've got tiers. You'll have somebody at the top, you'll have a board of directors, you'll have another layer with managers, and then eventually you'll come down to the bottom layer, which is the workforce. There's your pyramids. Right in plain sight in front of everybody, and nobody can see these pyramids, but they're there. Even politics, you've got your prime minister or your president, and you've got your politicians, and then comes down to the voters. So you've still got a pyramid system with that. And everywhere you look, you'll find pyramids everywhere. They're just invisible to the physical eyes. They are the eyes of the deceiver.
And Jason talks about how the pyramid is a pentagram too.
Yeah.
And the whole sacred geometry, everything, has, you have the cymatics where sound makes geometry.
I'm wondering actually, because you said about when that capstone is put on it, it'll do maybe only take 3 seconds to send a charge or whatever up onto the screen. But it's missing its casing stones. Is that the equivalent of like insulation? will the thing work? But
yeah, maybe that needs to be remedied before.
again, we've got macro, micro, and Bill Donahue talks about this. The bottom 5 vertebrae, the fused vertebrae, that's your cornerstone. That's the foundation on which you send that Kundalini rising up. We've all got a cornerstone on which to build. It can only be that one. It's Jacob the Dreamer goes up to Pine Hill, so he's climbing the 33 vertebrae. It's the whole Jesus story is just telling you what the sun does. It's astrology. It's born of a virgin, so it's in Virgo. And then you've got the birth in December. Then you've got the Passover, where the sun crosses the equator. You've also got it's shown on the Australian flag, you've got the Southern Cross. From a Northern Hemisphere perspective, or an inner circle perspective, if you want to use the Gleason map analogy to this, the sun would appear to die. It reaches its lowest point and stays there for 3 days, and then on the 25th it rises by 1 degree. So there's your resurrection being shown there. But it's also the esoteric to that. The cross is these avatars. You ascend out of that. That's fixed to this material world, but you rise out of it. It's all about rising. It's all about Aries, arise. You pass over from seeing things in a material way to seeing things with the spiritual eye. Let thine eye be singular.
Right, and when you rise, you get a whole different perspective. You know,
Yeah.
You're the observer. You're not stuck in the process of whatever's going on.
Yeah. It's so easy to get immersed and fall into these and get lured into these things, even if it's from the heart, without sort of realizing it's compartmentalized. How many people that's trapped? It's like, let's find that I want to help this charity and find a cure for this or a cure for that, and then you find that the answers are already out there. They've just been hidden away. They're not quite so easy to find. But even on the internet, they're still there. You may have to do a bit of digging, and again, that's shown with archaeology.
Search engine and Google.
In the material sense, you're unearthing the past with archaeology. Well, you're digging deep on the internet to try and find the right answers with these things. But they are there. They're just not made easy to find. But that's what makes it amazing.
Right, and really the answers are we can find them within us. They're all already there. You know, it's just we don't have those skills sharpened.
Well, go with the feeling every time. If something feels right, then go with it. If it's something you get the first thing you feel in that gut feeling is telling you it's wrong, then that's the best guide we've all got. It's that feeling that something's not right with this reality that's never shifted. It's the feeling that since that, I think it's that blood moon of 2017, it's like, I know the outcome is going to be good to this. That feeling is the same feeling again. I've had the first one validated, so I've got no reason to doubt this second one. The experience has proved, the feeling has been proven by going through the experience. So I've got no reason to doubt that this outcome is going to be any different, that it's going to be something good. Unless I absorb and take in the mind food of fear, and fear feeds fear, but life lives life, or life lives love. that sort of ties in again to Neville Goddard. In one of his visions, he sees this beautiful woman and this monster. And the more he punches this monster, the bigger it grows. It loves being punched. And it's all your negative thoughts and energies, and you're growing the monster, where if you just sort of let go of that, forgive it, forgive yourself, and then you can turn to the beautiful. And then you get to see the beautiful in this world. It's a realm of death. Everything is finite. It is subject to time here. So that's another reason for not getting too attached to anything, whether it be a tree or a pet or even family, because it's all finite. And depending on how that person feels, and if they feel they're going to die, they probably will. And there's nothing anybody else can do it. If they've convinced themselves that's what's going to happen to them, then pretty much I would say it's a certainty. They will manifest that in themselves. So for anybody
Yeah, I've
out
seen
there,
that so many times.
I was going to say, anybody out there who's faced with someone, an actor with a white coat and saying, you've got cancer, are you going to believe that? Or are you going to believe what your body's telling you?
Called the nocebo effect. You get the diagnosis, then you manifest it. Stay away from allopathic medicine at all costs. That's my advice.
Well, again, look at it from a business point of view. If you're in a business, you want customers, and you want a way of generating customers. So it's like, right, I'm in the business of sickness. Right, I'll come up with something that's not going to show any apparent signs for maybe a decade later. That is what we've got. All these things all these things that are prescribed are synthetic. They're copies of nature. They've been synthesized for the health of the prophets, the false prophet, which is the FT index. NHS Trust in the UK is on the stock exchange. Anybody can go and look it up. It's probably doing very well at the moment. They're all franchises. They're all not what they appear to be. In fact, I'd say if you see any organization that has the word trust in it, it is not to be trusted one bit. It's that mirror effect again.
Almost any organization, period. It seems like once things get that organized, it becomes about somebody lining their pockets.
Yeah. Maybe they've sold their souls and that's all they've got. So they're just trying to cling on to the little bit that they have got. Maybe they are the Klingons in Star Trek. Because if I remember rightly, they were quite aggressive and sort of species in that story. So maybe that's what that represents. But yeah, it's like if you're struggling to find the answers to something one side, then look the other way. So if you can't find it on the external, look at it on the internal. Likewise, if you see a negative to something, consider what the positive is. There's going to be a positive to it as well. It's just same as what will probably happen with the land masses where they reorientate. I mean, that's a big thing as far as sexuality. About sexual orientation is a huge topic. Again, it seems to be showing something, but it's a very twisted message the way it's being displayed to us. But once you decode that, and it's like, it's not an external physical thing. I've got a divine feminine and a divine masculine. I've got the masculine side that's sort of going out there, but I've got the nurturing creative side, which is the divine feminine. So I just need to bridge the two and bring them together so they're working together in unity. That again, I think, is what is really being displayed. But hey, it's a crazy how many people are getting transfixed by those strange mirrors and thinking that's what they are.
Right. Yeah, there's just so many things happening on so many different fronts. It's just shaking everything up. There's like no way they're going to let anything go back to the way it was. It's just impossible at this point.
Another display of this by the system is the way they dismantle buildings now. No more is it a wrecking ball approach and just chaos everywhere. It's fenced off. I think partly so you can't see when they take a building out and say, oh, there's lower foundations down there. We don't want you to see that. Nothing to see here. But it's a very controlled dismantling of a structure. I mean, a lot of people have said to me, oh, I want this all over with. Really? You want an apocalypse? You want it to happen overnight? Isn't it beautiful the way this is really happening? I mean, where I am, there's no war. It's something supposedly happening between Russia and Ukraine. I can't verify that, but it's certainly not affecting around here. And the same with everything else. In my world, it definitely doesn't exist because I'm not seeing it anywhere. It just depends what food you're taking in. And I'm talking about mind food here.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, media, it's their medium. They're playing a certain thing. And again, it's the same with Hollywood. The saying is that the death of an actor's career is to take a bad script. I think that was Mel Gibson in Waterworld, or no, who was it? One of the actors, he sort of fell from grace because it got bad reviews by the critics. Because again, like everything else, they're always peer reviewed, whether it be science, religions, or I mean, the Bible, as it is today, is basically a peer-reviewed paper by this council of priests who decided what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, that fits their agenda. Where they've fallen down, of course, is the Ethiopian Bible has got the Book of Enoch in it. But they won't count that one, and yet it's referenced in there. That character is hugely significant to all of this. And I agree. Enoch is Enki.
And I think I heard Jason say that the Jesus, the historical Jesus, was Enoch too, and Enki.
Yeah, it seems to be played out many ways. There's the Ralph Ellis lectures. He found it was just basically a scribbled note, I believe, in the British Library, because everything that's submitted is they keep. And it basically said Julius Caesar is the sort of great grandfather of this Jesus Christ, same initials. And he did a bit of digging, and it does make sense. There was the way he tells it, there was a Jewish uprising in AD 70, AD 68 to 70. And it's backed up in that Garden of Gethsemane story, because I think it says Peter uses a sword and cuts off an ear of the ones that are coming to arrest Jesus. Well, that proves that they're armed. This Jesus character is actually this King Esus of Parthia, which is the old name for Persia. Because he is a descendant of Cleopatra and Julius Caesar, and and then from one of their daughters who was, they say it's a concubine, but you wouldn't give a king a prostitute. You would give them a princess. That's the only way you're going to appease a king, is you give them. This is how royalties sort out battles a lot of the time in the bedroom. It's like, we marry you off to form an alliance with that family or that nation. So you've now got this Hyksos pharaoh, also known as shepherd kings, that don't actually have a kingdom of their own. They're also known as locusts, which I think gives you a big clue about, because it's been muddled anyway. But where was I going with this? Yeah, so you've got this King Esus of Parthia, so he can lay claim to the known world of Rome, Egypt, and Persia. So it's a huge threat to everybody. And then this Mary Magdalene, which is also his sister, has an incredible wealth that would run into billions today. Mary means tower. There's in France, it then goes down this line of the Orange Order through Amsterdam. They're sort of all, and he traces this, and there is a historical part to this. And I keep thinking I must really go back over those Ralph Ellis lectures and then apply the chronology that Jason has showed, and I bet it all ties in nicely.
I wonder if Trump is part of the Orange Order.
Yeah, well, the whole orange face thing, it seems to be another, partially a clue, but that's to do with the sacral chakra, the orange color. Red is the root, and then orange. So there's something definitely in that that's being shown to do with reproduction. Well, I think we've got to reduce the population and all this. I think there's a huge sort of clue being shown there with all of that again. And then you had that ship with a prominent container with the word evergreen stuck in the Suez, the Zeus Canal, the birth canal. It's all theatre being played out continuously.
Yes, it is. It looks like the chat is. Oh, it looks like my chat disappeared.
Oh, I can't see it.
Yeah, they've been going pretty good. Do y'all have any questions in the chat for James? I see people are really liking you, James. Joshua, Esoteric Compassionist, says James is awesome.
It's just looking at things in a slightly different way, and then like with the words again, it's like, where do you draw the line? Where is something no longer a coincidence when it keeps happening? If it 50 coincidences, it's still a coincidence. And what is a coincidence? I can also see a coincide dance. So you're being bought off. If you follow that script, you're being bought off by material wealth. You're doing a side dance. You're not on the main dance floor. You're not going on where you should be going.
Yeah, you're here to dance and
Yeah,
experience and learn and not suffer. You know, that's just a really. You can even avoid it once you learn the trick,
yeah,
like you talked about, of going to the future and just observing it from the future. Then
yeah.
bam, you know, and going and just to being self-aware and self-observant and not stuck from behind.
It reminded me as well, Alan Watts described it. Life is a dance. It's not about trying to get somewhere. It's enjoying the moment of that dance. And it is, and again, spiritually, it's talking about being in the moment, being present, living in the now, in the very moment, not thinking, oh, I've got to find money to get food tomorrow, or I've got to pay this bill or that bill, and all these material distractions that we're bombarded with. And to me, I see a very deliberate pattern to this of keeping us busy. But we're encouraged to be doing, but we're a human being. We're being human, being in the moment, surely. Or be in G, which is Gaia, be in Earth. Experience being human in this Earth.
Yeah, and we have so much power, so much power. Most people don't realize it, much less use it.
There's a little bit of materialism just came into my mind. I'm thinking, after 2046, if I start becoming a giant, I'm going to need some more clothes. I don't think I'll have to worry about any of that. it may end up, well, I wouldn't be surprised if it's talked about going into a crystalline state, moving into a new sort
Yeah,
of
it'll be
dimension.
based instead of carbon based.
Yeah, maybe we'll just be seen as a very vague human outline in a light form, and then clothes will be totally irrelevant anyway. So
Right, and maybe even food too. Might not need
yeah,
to eat.
yeah, you've got air. Well, that's definitely the breath of life, and water, which is just another variation of the same element. And then you've got the earthing with earth and the sunlight at the moment. But if that changes, then it's probably more beneficial. Certainly at the moment, it's a very intense burning. It's not as it was.
Yeah, the sun is very cruel these days, and I've always been one of those people always out in the sun for hours and hours, and now I can be out more than 30 minutes.
Yeah. Well, again, I think there's a lot of things going around about is a sun simulator, fake sun, and things. Again, what a huge clue we're being given there. It's basically saying it's about a false light, and there's an awful lot of people looking up to the sky thinking they're going to be saved. Well, yeah, they are going to be saved in the sense of like a computer program. I don't want to be saved. I want to become a flash drive.
Right, they're going to be saved on thumb drive.
Yeah, well, they probably will. They'll be recycled back in. I mean, the way Neville Goddard describes it, he says when you go through the experience of death, you go into another realm very similar to this. He says about the age of 20 with a seamless backstory of a childhood. He said you don't go through childhood again. But I tend more to go with what Jason says on this, purely because observing very young children and babies, the way they're observing things, and it's like they're looking, they are being observers. And I think a lot of them are thinking, what the hell's going on here? Because they intuitively know that it's not right.
Right.
Yeah, I feel we do come into this world armed with everything we need. But it's funny, of all the species, we've got the individual eye consciousness, but compared to the rest of the mammals, we're pretty useless for the first few years. We can't do anything for ourselves, whereas a giraffe or a horse knows it's got to stand up straight away and just does it. They seem to have this more sort of group consciousness level, rather than the individual aspects. That seems to be the fundamental difference. That is the sort of sleeping creator within us. Or to use the Anunnaki thing, I think Enki put these basically like a compact disc. It's the program they called a me. Again, what are the chances of that being the same word? And it's magnetic electric, basically, the electrical thoughts and the magnetism of the heart in these avatars.
Yeah, it's all connected.
Yeah. I don't know if I said this earlier or just thought of it, but that ringing in the ears, there's a huge one to show you the difference between the physical world and something from the unseen. But I've got it now, but it is so distinct from the physical hearing, and yet it's there. I can hear it in the ears.
Yeah, it's so interesting, the whole ringing in the ear phenomena that's happening to so many people right now too.
Yeah, it seems to change as well. The more I seem to resonate on the same frequency to whoever I'm talking to, the higher it goes. It's almost like a language that we can't decode at the moment.
Right.
I feel
definitely sending you signals.
Yeah. Well, another key that it's a video called, I think it's called The Green Light, but it's one of the most recent ones by Bill Donahue, and he talks about the shaman in South America, and they're saying the plants told us the information. The green, was it the chloro? I think it's, I can't remember the
Chlorophyll.
Yeah, that's it. The chlorophyll. It seems to be like a key that meshes into our DNA and gives us the answers. The plants talk to us basically because they're able to do things that the pharmaceutical industry and doctors can't do, and yet they've not been to college, they've not had education, they've not been to medical school, and now suddenly they can do it. They've been taught by plants. But of course, oh no, can't. That's not scientific. But the proof is there. It's real. And that is what this reality is. It is real. Israel is where they get that one from. But it's real as in real to real. It is basically a film show being put out. The background scene, everything outside of you is a background scene, and we project onto it and we act in it. And the world is a stage after all.
Yep, they've been telling us that, haven't they?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So it's like, okay, if the world's a stage, what character do I want to play? How much of a starring role do I want? Do I need to just, am I restricted to just play one character? I could be a doctor or a politician if I want to do that. Or I can play multi roles and all at the same time. It's fantastic. And the best bit about it is I'm writing it as I go. No conscious pre-planning. It just seems to all fall into place. It's, and I can't logically figure that out, how it does it, but it shows us an intelligent design, and it's like greater than any one of us, and it's like, wow. There's been over the years quite a few have come close to certain aspects, and definitely Jason is in that category. But it took that unique position he was in, and the timing of it. That again says to me that, well, basically he's a modern day equivalent of Thoth. Maybe I'm the only one that sees him that way. I don't know, but it's, again, it tells you in, I think in the third chapter of Genesis, the name of God is I am. And I am whatever you see me as. And that applies to all of us. If I see somebody else as that mythological character, that's how they come across to me, then as far as I'm concerned, they are, whether anybody else sees them that way. And again, that is shown. You can have two people at a concert. One person can feel one way about a piece of music, the other person can feel very different. It depends what you see and hear and how you feel about things.
Yeah, and Jason's definitely shows how to be the star of this show, right? Just came in, and you know, like you said, it wasn't pre-planned for him to come out and have a YouTube channel, really. You know, when he was going through all this reading and making his charts and taking his notes and figuring all this out, and you know, and he's just getting started. He's just getting started, and yeah, he's a great example on manifesting your reality. Because you know, the short time that he's been out of prison, you know, they gave him $100, and look at him now.
I find this fantastic. I mean, look at the timing of it. When he first started doing the research, the internet was in its infancy, and then I would imagine most prisons around the world, you'll be very restricted as to what you can access on the internet. So it's allowed him the time to put all this together. So he's come out with a fully fully complete formula that is self-proving. And it's like, I can see the beauty of the linear timing of everything. It's almost like cogs on a pocket watch, the way everything is just clicking into place. It's like, wow.
It's almost like it's a computer program.
Yeah, I think it, well, as far as I'm concerned, because of the very nature of it, and well, like Jason says, we can only describe it from within it anyway, or as Ken says, you can't think your way out of a thinking box. We can't go outside of it to look in, as it were, to then say, well, this is what it looks like from the outside. We're looking at it from the inside all the time. But again, it's go within, isn't it?
Yep. Macro and micro again.
There's another one that's just flashed into my mind. I don't know what, well, I do know why it's coming to mind. There was a film called Journey to the Center of the Earth. And that's where we need to go, Earth being an anagram of heart. That's the center of our individual Earths, is our heart. And that's where... Well, I'd say probably the heart is the feminine side, the pineal gland is the sort of masculine side, and the two now work together. There's also, you've got your left and right hemispheres, but you've also got that vertical axis between the mind and the heart and the gut as well. So that thing about being in alignment, you're aligning your chakras so that energy can rise.
Yeah, not live in those lower chakras. Like so many people just stay in the survival chakras instead of moving up, through the solar plexus into the heart and, expanding to have such a much bigger experience.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go. This is another area I don't agree with Ken Wheeler on, because he's dead against meditating. But to put this in a term, in a way that I think most people can relate to this, when you have a flash of a dream that you've had, certainly with my experience of it is, if I then try and think of it, it dissolves like sand going through your hand and you can't stop it. And an extension of that is meditation, where it's not consciously thinking, it's letting those things come into the mind and being an observer rather than thinking, oh, what's that? I need to look at it, because it would disappear. So you're doing the unthinkable. And that's exactly what the story is of what Enki did. He did the unthinkable and gave humanity a part of the Anunnaki or the Anuna consciousness. And again, I think that's a huge clue. When you take a leap of faith, you're doing the unthinkable. And it seems to be a consistent message to don't think about it, just let it come. If you're this material world shows it. Look at royalty and actors and various professions. They move in certain circles. A king doesn't go to visit. A king holds an audience. So in the esoteric version of that, in meditation, don't try and think things. Don't go looking for it. Let it come to you. Act like a king or a queen, whatever way you want to do it. And it will come. I guarantee it will come. I'm going to put my head on the block on this one, talking from experience. Because if I've tried to think of things, it dissolves. It seems to be the electrical circuit of the brain interferes with the magnetism. But as soon as you neutralize that electrical circuit of the brain, the magnetism will then start doing what it's meant to do. Because is it not the dielectric drives the magnetism, although it's all part of one?
Right.
So again, I mean, although Ken Wheeler's not coming from a spiritual side, it's he's still showing it, whether he knows it or not.
He confirms everything. Yeah, he confirms. Even though he doesn't want to, he's confirming everything that we know.
Well, I like what he does. I mean, I'm not going to be triggered when he says about woo-woo and with New Age. I understand where he's coming from that, but there's a huge difference between New Age and New Thought. And people like Neville Goddard and Edgar Casey, they're described as New Thought writers. That's because, I mean, if you look at the whole sort of flower power, New Age hippie movement, it's very much associated with the advertising of Coca-Cola. And I think that's a huge clue. And certainly with modern music festivals, how that has changed from being something that was all about saving the earth and brotherhood of man and all this thing. And now it's like mess left everywhere, abandoned tents, bags of rubbish they can't be bothered to take home and leave it to somebody else to clear up. And it's like, that is so far removed from the original idea. And it's like, what happened to this wanting to save the earth when you're leaving plastic everywhere? I find this reality is almost like a sick joke at times.
It really is. There's so much irony. You're just like, are y'all for real? Just like when they had the summit about climate change, they all came in their private jets and their entourages with limos and, you know, big SUV Hummer kind of limos.
Yeah. Well, climate change is such an ambiguous term. It's like, well, if it's sunny tomorrow, but it's cloudy today, what's that? Is that global warming or climate change?
Right.
Change.
And climate is always changing. That's kind of the definition of climate, you know, changing weather pattern.
Well, again, it follows that pattern of mixture of truth and lies. They're telling you that the climate.
Says that too. There's always a little bit of truth in the big lie. You know, you just got to find that little piece of truth that's in all those big lies, and you'll have it all worked out.
Well, this is the thing. It comes down to the foundation. How can you build a lie if there's no foundation of truth? There has to be a truth for the lie to build upon.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Did you just hear a sort of a strange like hiss sound come down your end?
That was my dog sneezing.
Oh, because I've noticed this sound when I've not even had the Wi-Fi on, and I've like recorded myself talking, and it's that same sort of noise. Like it's almost like a reptilian thing that's, and I keep meaning to analyze what I'm talking about and when it does it, because I'm thinking with all this energy and things, maybe there's even that is something trying to communicate in some way. I'm not going to dismiss anything until I've looked into it a bit more, and it's like, that's interesting.
There are no coincidences, you know. I think everything kind of happens, has some kind of purpose, some kind of intention behind it. It's interesting how Jason and I got cut off right when he was about to go into the weather and how, you know, that whole topic.
The time was 4:40.
I didn't touch anything. You could tell he didn't touch anything on his end, and just bam, it just stopped.
Yeah, that was incredible. Another thing I've noticed, and there's no way this can just be random. I can look out the window and I can see various company vans going about, and it's like they're spelling out messages because of the company names and the order they're coming past, and it's like there's no way that could be, that I can conceive that being pre-planned from a human sort of conscious mind of me looking out that window at that particular time to see those 3 or 4 vehicles going by and then noticing those names on them, and it's like, oh, I see a message in that.
Yeah, well, reality can be morphed in nanoseconds, you know, to fit whatever it needs to for your particular needs at that time. So I think sometimes it does happen that way.
Yeah, it's just, again, it's mind-bogglingly amazing, and it's like, wow, I'd never seen this before. But now it's it's
Right.
just,
Tom Campbell says that once you like show you want to kind of tap into source, he calls it the larger consciousness system. That once it notices that you're trying to connect, that you become a person of interest to it, and it starts giving you signs that yeah, there is more to this than you know what everybody's been telling you, and yeah, we do have a connection, and yeah, I will send you messages if you're looking for them, and you know, yeah, all that kind of stuff.
that is absolutely fabulous. It, because you reminded me of something I forgot to say on the last video I did. The way, oh, I know what it was. Yes, I nearly lost it there. You sometimes get people where there's been an argument, and you'll get a third party come along and said, well, have you tried talking to them? So what if by extension we try talking to this Similacrone? Because it's said in religion, sort of in from a religious perspective, you have a direct connection to God. God is always listening. You can always talk to God.
I do talk to the Similacrone.
So why not? And these so-called elites, as it were.
Yeah, I call them ruling parasites.
Well, the way it's, I've sort of had it or seen on videos and things, and it seems to be the case. Every 7 generations through inbreeding is causing defects. You've got to then, the bits of the vine that you've trimmed, you've got to then pull back in. So that would imply that we are in some way related to them, because these sort of controllers of this world, these sort of wealthy people, I think they're just a puppet level. There's something beyond them anyway. So if I have I've noticed this before, if I have certain thoughts, the ringing goes up and it's like, I'm putting you into panic by what I'm thinking or the information I'm getting. And it's like a two-way communication. I'm not just talking to the Similacrone. Maybe I'm also, or they're reading my thoughts from the opposite perspective, and it's maybe putting them in a panic even more, and maybe sort of collectively we're forcing them to make mistakes. I see it as like a hydra, and it's like their own greed and their own desire to save their own necks. Again, it's shown in the Bible about the giants clambering over each other to try and save themselves from drowning in the flood. They're all trying to save their own necks. They turn on each other. So maybe it's like one head of the hydra can sort of start feeling a bit panicky and start getting a bit jittery and wanting to save its own neck, as it were. And I'm deliberately saying that because, being the internet, I'm planting that seed, hoping that they are hearing this.
Right, and they probably are.
Yeah. What a fun game this is.
It is. And thank you all for being in the chat. We still have like 47 people here, and some of them have been here the whole time. We got some amazing errants here that have some endurance for sure. But it's been a little over 2 hours, and I do have a few chores to do, but we'll definitely have to keep doing this, James. I think
Yeah.
it's good. A lot of good intel, a lot of good gnosis kind of just develops out of these kind of conversations. And I used to always love listening to chats like this myself. And I know it's not for everybody. Some people just want to get down to the nitty gritty and just the facts, man, just the facts. But I like kind of meandering through all these things, and yeah, it's just fun. Like you said, this is just such a fun experience, such a fun ride, such a fun game, such a fun school, however you want to look at it. That, yeah, just manifest what you want and enjoy it, and don't try to fix all the broken stuff out there. It's supposed to be that way, so you have perspective and know what's good and what's not.
Again, Neville Goddard says this. He says, you're not going to change the Egypt. You're not going to change that material world. It's going to keep playing out on its auto program. And again, look in the Bible. Did Jesus convert, and was there not a jeering crowd when he's going to be crucified in that story? So therefore, not everybody was agreeing with him. And as Alan Watts says, he is the first blasphemer, because that character's saying, I'm the Son of Man, the Father and I are one. And it's like, whoa, you can't say that. So that's the first blasphemy, which is sort of ironic, really.
Right. But yeah, such a fun ride. So thank you everybody for being here, and we'll definitely do this again.
Yeah. Hopefully I try and use everyday analogies that people can relate to. That, I think, that is a big part of this. It's like, explain it in a way that everybody, things people know and they're familiar with. Like when you're driving a car, you're on the road, but you're being aware of all your surroundings, every potentiality. So if you can do it with driving, then adopt that into how you go about life. Expand the boundaries on that awareness. If I say that, how's that going to make that person feel, and all this sort of thing. It's not easy. It's a minefield to go through, but it's worth doing.
It's a challenge, but it's good to be at the point where you welcome challenge, because if you're not challenged, then you're bored, right? You need to be challenged.
Yeah, need that stimulation. It seems to be something we're here for, to be stimulated. And again, nature, it doesn't grow, and something stimulates that seed in the ground, in the darkness, to grow and become a tree. So we're part of nature with these physical bodies. So why can't we do the same? We are doing the same. So
Yep. Yes, we are. So it's almost 4:20 by our time. So I know we have a lot of 4:20 kind of people out there. Just like say about happy hour, it's happy hour somewhere. It's 4:20 somewhere. But yeah, Jane.
I've got 411 and 56%. So I've got 11 twice on the phone, as it were.
Yeah, it's 66 and 411.
Yeah. That's again, it's like almost like the things giving you little codes and things all the time.
Right. And Jason kind of talks about that. He says, don't delve too much into that, put too much significance on it, because then it becomes a distraction. But noticing it is fine because it shows you're on the right path, but don't get too,
Well, it's described as angel numbers. So if you keep seeing a number, just go on the internet and maybe look about just the opening 5-6 websites telling you, and get the general consensus of what a particular number means. And then just acknowledge it, because like you say, otherwise you just keep chasing numbers and things, and it does become
right. I always see the 4 mostly, and that means that you're on the right track according to the internet. So that's always good. But yeah, I see all kinds of patterns, and if I really want to look for them, I see more. It's just everything. If you put any kind of intention out there, even if it's subconscious or unconscious, you will manifest it.
Yeah, I'd say the way to view those, when you keep seeing those numbers, see them as like likes on a post on Facebook. It's like, yeah, you got a thumbs up, you're on the right track, keep going.
Right. Yeah. And there's more to this reality than just material things, which is material anyway. Nothing is solid. And they do tell us that. They tell us that right away. Atoms are 99.999% empty space. But nobody puts that together. Well, everything's made of atoms, so everything is 99.999% empty space.
And then what's the
There's
percentage
no other
of...
way it can be. That's just common sense. That's not even, yeah. But yet everybody thinks everything's material, even though they tell us that from the get-go.
Well, that whole 1% theme, it's like, what are these elite often referred to as the top 1%? It's like a mirror version of it again.
Right. 0.0000001%.
Maybe the zeros are the number of volcanic. Maybe that's all exciting. And then it's spun as, oh, got to be fearful of them and got to be fearful of that group, and it's them doing it. And
Yeah, please, no fear, no fear. There's nothing to fear, because I was just talking about this earlier. If you don't fear death or imprisonment or torture, and if you're actually tortured, your soul leaves your body anyway. People are always saying this when they have really traumatic events where they get injured. They never feel it when it happens. And
yeah,
of course, with really serious sexual abuse and things like that, of course, they don't remember any of it because they weren't there. Our immortal personality wasn't there. Our avatar was exposed to it, but we weren't. And then, of course, death, that's not really death anyway. And we talked about fearing death. And then imprisonment, Jason's proven what you can do if you go to prison. I always said I would just get really good at astral projection if I had that situation, but what Jason did was awesome.
yeah.
So there's nothing to fear. There's nothing to fear. What else could you fear besides those three things, And you don't lose loved ones. It's like they move to a different place for all, And you can stay connected to them even when their avatar is not near you any longer.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, definitely. Right, you said you got things you need to do.
Right, James, and you probably need a spliff for 420, so.
Yeah.
So I will talk to you next time, and thank you everybody for hanging out with us, and everybody who will watch this in the future. And I hope you have a good experience, whatever time of day it is for you. And we'll talk to y'all next time. And you too, James.